Hi, welcome to episode 4 of Making a 2D Game in Android Studio. In this episode, we're going to create the player, create animations for the player, and make it movable based on touch events. First thing we're going to do is change some code from the last episode. Over here where we did the scaling, you're actually dividing two integers here, so your answer will be an integer. You want to make sure one of them at least is a float, so you get a decimal value. It's just going to add this. And another thing we're going to do is, you know how here we have a set vector method where we can set the vector? Actually, we're just going to take this out completely. And create a game-wide final called move speed. And we'll set that to -5. So in the constructor here, we'll set dx to and you'll see later in this tutorial why we're doing this. And now what we're going to do is create the new class. And we're going to call this class GameObject. This is going to be an abstract class, so it's not going to be instantiated. And all objects in the game are going to extend this class. dy is the y vector, dx is the d vector. So all objects that we're going to create in this game are going to have these following attributes. Now we're going to set getter and setter methods. They're called mutator and accessor methods. And we're only going to create the ones that are necessary for this game, even though it is good practice to create a setter and getter for all the attributes. And one more very important one, because every single object will have an x, y, width, and height, we want to check for collision between objects, and when we do that, we want to see if their rectangles intersect, since every object will essentially take up the space of a rectangle. So when we're checking for a collision later on, we're going to use the intersects method to check if the rectangles are intersecting. And if so, then the collision is happening, and so on. So we're going to create the getRectangle method. So we can get the rectangle space that that object in the game takes up. Let's import rect. There we go. And this is abstract again, so it cannot be instantiated. But all objects in the game are going to extend this class. So now we're going to create the player. Or the player class. The player is going to use a sprite sheet. And we have this extra variable here, dya, for acceleration. We're only going to have acceleration in the up or down direction, so that's why there's no dxa. The start time is going to be used to calculate incrementing the score. And we're going to create the animation class next. Oh, forgot to extend the game object. So here we're going to create a bitmap array that's going to store all the different sprites for the image of the player. The array is going to have the length of the number of frames that we're passing into the constructor. And for our player, we're going to have 3 frames. As you can see here, let's find the helicopter. There we go, 3 frames. Very simple. So we see this image. We're taking this image in, we're passing it to the constructor here in the player class. Now we want to divide this image into 3 and store each one. So we want the first element of the array to be just this image, the second element of the array to be this one, the third one to be this one. Then our animation class is going to scroll through them to create the illusion that it's moving or changing, that the wings, the flappers, what do you call them? What are they called? How do I not know this? Okay. Forget about it. Propellers? So again, first element of the array is going to be this, second element is that, third element is that. Now we're going to pass this array into the animations class, which we'll create next. And we'll set a delay of 10. That's our constructor. Now we're going to create the setup. This method is going to be called by the motion event. When you press down, the helicopter will go up. Of course, what else do we need? What did we also put in the background class? Update and draw. Most important. And here in the update class, update method, we're going to increment the score. So it should be every 100 milliseconds, or 1/10 of a second, the score goes up by 1. Update the animation. And if up is true, which means we are pressing down on the screen, so this is the acceleration. Actually, an easier way to do this. Alright, we'll just keep it like that for now. We're also going to cap the speed of the helicopter. course, the draw method. Alright, on to the animation class. So while we have the played once boolean up here, is some animations we're only going to want to play once. For example, when we get to the explosion, we don't want it to keep exploding. We want the animation to go through one time, go through all these sprites, and that's it. But we'll talk about that later. Actually, I don't think we need this code. Yeah, we don't need this. Remember calling set delay earlier? Well, here's the method. Oh, it's outside the class. Oops. This is in case you want to manually set the frame. And of course, we need the update method. We don't need a draw method in this animation, which is good. So this is just another, this is like the third or fourth timer we're using in this program. They all work the same way. The first one was to cap the FPS at 30. Second one was to increment the score. And then this one is just to set this one's going to determine which image in the array it's going to return. So when we're drawing the image here in the player class, we're going to get the image. We're calling animation.getImage. So over here in getImage, one second. So what the player class is going to be drawing will be determined by this method. Hmm. Animation is abstract, cannot be instantiated. No, animation's not abstract. Why is this saying animation is abstract? Public class animation. Am I spelling it right? Animation. Oh, this imported android.view.animation. No, we don't want that. We want to use our own animation class, not the one in the API. Okay. Alright. Now let's instantiate our player. First, create the reference, private player. Then instantiate player equals new player. So let's look at the parameters for the constructor again. We need the resource. Alright. Now we need the width. Now you could divide this by 3. But let's just say about 65. 65 is good. Should work. The width of each individual frame. The height, 25 should work for the height. And how many frames do we have? Frames, 3. Do you have everything? Now here's something interesting. We're only going to update the background if the player is playing. And we're only going to update the player if the player is playing. Now we're going to draw the player. So now we should have our player on the screen. How are we going to interact with our player? Well, when we first start up the game, we want the player to not be playing. We want playing to be false. And then on our first click on the player, we want the player to start moving. And the background to start moving too. So to do that, we need the onTouch event method. We're going to override that. Do we have it already? Surface destroyed. Oh, we have it already. Okay. Alright. And this is going to handle touch events. It's going to listen for touch events on the screen, on the surface view. Alright, so try to guess what this means. If event.getAction is action down. That means if you press down. So now if this is the first time pressing down, which means the player is not playing yet, then player.setPlaying true. And if the player, or else if the player is already playing, the helicopter is going to fly up while you're pressing down. Then we're going to return true. This is very important. And now we're going to listen for the other event, which is when you release your finger from the phone. That was action down, so this one's going to be action up. That makes sense. Player.set up false. You're no longer going up because you released your finger. And remember to return true. Alright, looks good. Let's test this out. Let's hope it works on the first try. The reason I'm not testing this on the larger screens is because the emulator is already slow as it is, and larger screens take up a lot more resources, so it'll be really laggy. On the actual screens, on the actual phones, though, it shouldn't lag at all, regardless of screen size. Remember, Control F12 is to switch to view. Oh, okay, it's not working. Why is that not working? No object reference. Oh, that's a silly mistake. Oh, there we go. There's the player. Oh, he's going up when we click up. He's going down when we click down. Cool. Now what we're going to try to do is create the rest of the environment and make the player stop and reset when he collides with something. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for watching this episode. In the next episode, what are we gonna do in the next episode? The next episode is gonna be a short one. We're just gonna create smoke puffs that follow the player out. And the way we create the smoke puffs will be an introduction to how we create the missiles that will be launched at the player that he has to dodge. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.